Hello. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here, settling in wherever you are right now, perhaps under soft blankets or beside a quiet window where the last light of day is fading into something gentler. You've traveled through your own day, and now you've arrived at this moment, this pause, where you can simply rest and listen. There's nothing you need to do, nothing to solve or chase or worry about. Tonight, we're going to wander together through one of nature's most beautiful rhythms, a pattern as old as the turning of seasons and as reliable as the stars overhead. We're going to explore the quiet, astonishing world of animal migration. You may close your eyes if you wish. You may let your breathing slow. And if you find yourself drifting towards sleep before we finish, that's perfectly fine. These words will be here, gentle and patient, whether you hear them all or only a few. And if you'd like more journeys like this one, more soft science to carry you toward rest, you're welcome to follow along. But there's no pressure, no urgency, only an invitation, as quiet as moonlight on water. So let us begin, slowly, with the simplest and most soothing truth. All across this earth, in every season, animals are moving, not in panic, not in chaos, but in ancient, inherited rhythms that have guided them for millions of years. They follow invisible roads written in their very cells, roads made of starlight and magnetism, temperature and memory. And tonight, we'll walk those roads together, one soft fact at a time, until your mind is full of wings and tides and the gentle, endless motion of life. Migration is, at its heart, a journey, but not the kind of journey we often imagine, full of urgency and danger. Instead, think of it as a slow, purposeful drifting from one place to another, timed to the rhythms of the planet itself. When the days grow shorter in one hemisphere, certain creatures begin to feel a stirring, a quiet call that says, "It is time." And so they go, not because they are fleeing, but because they are following warmth, following food, following the ancient paths their ancestors took, paths encoded so deeply that even a bird born in captivity, who has never seen the route, knows which direction to fly. Scientists have a term for this knowledge. They call it innate behavior, meaning it is born within the animal, woven into its biology like the color of its feathers or the shape of its wings. A young Arctic tern, barely fledged, will leave the cold northern shores where it hatched and fly south, all the way to the Antarctic, without a guide, without a map, without hesitation. It has never made this journey before, and yet it knows. Somewhere in the microscopic architecture of its brain, in the way its cells respond to light and magnetism, the route is already written. This is not learned. It is inherited, a gift passed down through millennia, as reliable as sunrise. And what a gift it is, because migration is not a frantic escape. It is a conversation between the animal and the earth. The planet tilts on its axis, and the sunlight shifts, and in response, life moves. Flowers bloom in sequence across continents, and butterflies follow those blooms. Ocean currents warm and cool, and fish ride those currents like travelers on a gentle train. The air grows cold, and birds slip south on favorable winds, conserving energy, resting in stopover sites that have welcomed their kind for thousands of generations. There's a harmony in this, a rhythm so vast and so steady that it can feel almost like music if you listen closely enough. Let's begin with one of the most peaceful images in all of nature, the migration of monarch butterflies. These delicate creatures, weighing less than a gram, travel thousands of kilometers from Canada and the United States down to the mountains of central Mexico. They do this every autumn, riding air currents, gliding more than flapping, conserving their energy with an efficiency that seems almost miraculous. And here's the truly soothing part. No single butterfly makes the entire round trip. The journey takes multiple generations. A butterfly born in Mexico in the spring will fly north, lay eggs, and die. Its children will continue north, and their children after them. And then, in the fall, the great-grandchildren, who have never seen Mexico, will fly south to the very same trees their great-grandparents left. They will cluster in the Oyamel fir forests, covering the branches in living, breathing color, and they will wait out the winter in a state of quiet rest, barely moving, barely eating, simply existing in the cool, misty air of the mountains. This is called supergeneration migration. It is a journey shared across lifetimes, a relay race run not by individuals, but by families, by lineages, by the unbroken thread of life moving through time. And the butterflies do not rush. They rest often. They feed on nectar in meadows and gardens. They drift on thermals, rising columns of warm air that lift them higher with no effort at all. They are not struggling. They are flowing, like leaves on a gentle stream, carried by forces larger than themselves. And they are not alone. All over the world, other creatures are moving in similarly calm, purposeful ways. In the oceans, gray whales travel from the cold feeding grounds of the Arctic down to the warm lagoons of Baja California, where they give birth in shallow, protected waters. The journey is long, nearly 10,000 miles round trip, but the whales do not hurry. They swim steadily, sometimes alone, sometimes in small groups, surfacing to breathe, diving to rest, moving through the water with a grace that defies their size. They do not eat during the journey south. Instead, they live off the thick layer of blubber they built up during the summer, when the Arctic waters were rich with krill and small fish. This is not starvation. It is preparation. It is trust in the cycle, trust that the food will be there when they return north in the spring, and that for now, they have enough. In the lagoons, the water is warm and calm. The mothers float in the shallows, and their calves nurse and grow strong. There are no predators here. No orcas hunting in the depths. Just sun-warmed water, gentle tides, and time. The whales rest. They sing to one another, low, resonant songs that travel for miles through the water. And when the calves are ready, when they have grown large enough to make the journey north, the families leave, slipping out of the lagoons and back into the open ocean, following the coastline, following the currents, following the ancient roads that their kind have traveled for millions of years. This is the rhythm of migration, not a desperate flight, but a seasonal movement, as natural and necessary as breathing. The animals are not lost. They're not confused. They're doing exactly what they are meant to do, and they do it with a calm assurance that can be deeply comforting to witness. Because in a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable, migration reminds us that there are still patterns we can rely on. There are still rhythms older and steadier than our own worries. Rhythms that continue regardless of what we do. Rhythms that connect the past to the present to the future in an unbroken line. Consider the caribou of the Arctic tundra. Every spring, they move north in vast herds, sometimes numbering in the hundreds of thousands. They walk slowly, steadily, across the snow and ice, heading toward the coastal plains where the first green plants of the season will emerge. The journey can be hundreds of miles, but the caribou do not rush. They graze as they go, pausing to rest, to nurse their young, to simply stand and breathe the cold, clean air. They move as a river moves, flowing over the landscape, reshaping around obstacles, always moving forward but never in a panic. And when they reach the calving grounds, the females give birth almost simultaneously, a coordinated event that ensures the predators, the wolves and bears, cannot possibly catch all the vulnerable young. There is safety in numbers, yes, but there is also something more, a collective trust, a shared understanding that this is the right place, the right time, the right way to bring new life into the world. And then, when summer ends and the first snows return, the caribou turn around and walk south again. They retrace their steps, moving back to the forest where they will spend the winter, where the snow is not as deep and the lichens they eat are easier to find. This is not a migration driven by fear. It is a migration driven by the seasons, by the availability of food, by the ancient knowledge that life is easier if you move with the earth's rhythms rather than against them. Even the smallest creatures migrate, and they do so with the same calm purpose. Ladybugs, those tiny, spotted beetles we often see in gardens, gather in the autumn and fly to the mountains, where they cluster together in shelter crevices and wait out the winter in a state of dormancy. They do not freeze. They do not starve. They simply rest, thousands of them pressed together, sharing warmth, sharing safety, until the spring sun wakes them and they fly back down to the valleys to feed and reproduce. This is migration on a miniature scale, but it is no less remarkable. no less soothing in its regularity. In the rivers of the Pacific Northwest, salmon are born in cold, clear streams high in the mountains. They hatch from eggs buried in gravel, and they spend the first part of their lives in fresh water, growing slowly, learning to swim, learning to find food. And then, when they are ready, they turn downstream and begin a journey to the ocean. They do not fight the current. They let it carry them, drifting with the flow, moving from narrow streams to wider rivers, to estuaries where fresh water meets salt. Their bodies change as they go. They adapt to the increasing salinity, their gills and kidneys shifting to handle the new environment. And when they reach the ocean, they vanish into the vastness, swimming far from shore, feeding and growing for years. But they do not forget where they came from. When the time comes to reproduce, the salmon turn around and swim back. They find the river they left, and they swim upstream, against the current now, but still with purpose, still with that same calm determination. They navigate by smell, by the chemical signature of their home stream, a sense so faint that no human instrument can detect it, but so clear to the salmon that they can follow it across hundreds of miles of ocean and river. They leap up waterfalls. They swim through rapids. And when they reach the place where they were born, they spawn, laying eggs in the gravel, and then they die. Their bodies become food for the forest, nutrients that feed the trees and the soil and the insects, which in turn feed the next generation of salmon. It is a cycle, a loop, a migration that connects the ocean to the mountains and back again, a journey that nourishes an entire ecosystem. This is the gift of migration. It is not just movement, it is connection. It is the flow of energy and nutrients across vast distances, the weaving together of ecosystems that might otherwise be separate. When the salmon die in the streams, they bring the richness of the ocean into the heart of the forest. When the caribou move across the tundra, they distribute seeds and nutrients, shaping the landscape as they go. When the birds fly south, they carry pollen and seeds, connecting forests and grasslands across continents. Migration is not just about the animals themselves. It is about the whole web of life, the intricate, beautiful network of relationships that makes the earth a living, breathing whole. And the animals do this without maps, without GPS, without any of the tools we rely on. They navigate by the sun and the stars, by the earth's magnetic field, by landmarks and smells and sounds. Some birds can see polarized light, a property of sunlight that allows them to determine direction, even on cloudy days. Some sea turtles can sense the angle and intensity of the Earth's magnetic field, using it like a compass to find their way across thousands of miles of open ocean. Some insects use the position of the sun, adjusting for its movement across the sky, calculating direction with a precision that would impress any mathematician. These are not conscious calculations. They are instincts, built-in abilities that have been refined over millions of years of evolution. And they work. They work beautifully, reliably, year after year, generation after generation. Let us think about the albatross, that great wanderer of the southern oceans. These birds spend most of their lives in flight, gliding over the waves on wings that can span more than 3 meters. They rarely flap. Instead, they use a technique called dynamic soaring, riding the wind gradients just above the ocean surface, gaining energy from the difference in wind speed between the wave troughs and the crests. They can fly for hours, for days, without a single wing beat, covering thousands of kilometers with almost no effort. They sleep on the wing, one half of their brain at a time, the other half keeping watch, keeping them aloft. And when they need to rest, they land on the water and float, bobbing gently on the swells, until they are ready to fly again. Albatrosses migrate across entire ocean basins. They follow the winds, the great circular currents of air that spin around the Antarctic. They visit feeding grounds thousands of miles apart, always returning, eventually, to the same small island where they were born, where they will find a mate and raise a single chick. The journey is vast, but the birds are never lost. They know where they are. They know where they are going. And they move through the world with a confidence that comes from millions of years of practice, millions of years of ancestors who made the same journey and survived, who passed down the knowledge, the instincts, the abilities that make this possible. And here is something deeply comforting. Many migrating animals travel in groups. They do not journey alone. Geese fly in V formations, each bird positioned to take advantage of the updraft created by the bird in front, reducing the energy cost of flight by as much as 30%. They take turns leading, rotating the position of greatest effort so that no single bird is exhausted. They call to one another as they fly, soft honking sounds that keep the flock together, that reassure each member that they are not alone, that they are part of something larger. If one bird is injured or sick and must land, two others will often land with it, staying until it recovers or dies, and only then rejoining the migration. This is cooperation. This is community. This is the understanding that survival is easier when we care for one another. Wildebeest in Africa migrate in massive herds, sometimes more than 1 million strong, moving in a great circular route through Tanzania and Kenya, following the rains, following the fresh grass that springs up after each storm. They move slowly, grazing as they go, calves walking beside their mothers, the whole herd flowing across the savanna like a living river. There are predators, yes, lions and crocodiles, but the herd is so large that most individuals are safe. They find safety in numbers, in the simple fact that there are so many of them that no predator can make a significant dent in their population. And they move together, coordinated not by a leader, but by a collective sense, a shared awareness of where the food is, where the water is, where they need to be. Even fish migrate in schools, thousands or millions of individuals moving as one, turning and twisting in perfect synchrony, creating shapes that flow and pulse like a single organism. Each fish watches its neighbors, adjusting its speed and direction to match, and the result is a coordination so precise that it looks choreographed, rehearsed, intentional. But it is not. It is emergence, a pattern that arises from simple rules followed by many individuals, a beauty that comes not from central control, but from cooperation, from trust, from the understanding that together, they're stronger, safer, more capable than they could ever be alone. This is what migration teaches us, if we are willing to listen. It teaches us that movement can be peaceful, that journeys do not have to be frantic or fearful, that there is wisdom in following the seasons, in trusting the cycles, in moving with the rhythms of the world rather than against them. It teaches us that we are not alone, that we are part of a larger pattern, a larger community, a larger web of life that stretches across the planet and back through time. And it teaches us that even the smallest creatures, even the most delicate butterflies and the tiniest fish, have within them a strength and a knowledge that is ancient and reliable and deeply, deeply reassuring. So as we continue this journey together, as we explore more of these gentle facts, let yourself relax into the rhythm of it. Let yourself feel the calm that comes from knowing that somewhere, right now, animals are migrating. Birds are flying south on steady wings. Whales are swimming through dark, quiet waters. Butterflies are resting in mountain forests. And they're doing exactly what they are meant to do, exactly what their ancestors did, exactly what their descendants will do, in an unbroken chain that stretches back to the beginning of life and forward into a future we can only imagine. You are safe. You are here. And the world, for all its complexity, still turns in rhythms we can trust. Let us continue, softly, into the details. Let us explore the ways animals prepare for migration, the signals they respond to, the routes they take, the places they rest. Let us learn about the hummingbirds that cross the Gulf of Mexico in a single, non-stop flight, and the dragonflies that migrate in swarms, and the bats that travel hundreds of miles to find the caves where they will hibernate. Let us discover the eels that are born in the Sargasso Sea and swim to rivers all over Europe and North America, and the sea turtles that return to the exact beach where they hatched, decades later, to lay their own eggs. Let us walk beside the elephants as they move across the African landscape, following paths so old they are worn into the earth itself, paths that have been used for thousands of years, paths that connect water sources and feeding grounds in a network of knowledge passed down from grandmother to daughter. There is so much to explore, and we have all the time we need, because this is not a race. This is a gentle wandering, a slow unfolding of knowledge, a soft accumulation of facts that will, I hope, carry you toward rest. So breathe, settle, and let us continue together, one quiet fact at a time, into the beautiful, calming world of animal migration. Migration begins long before the journey itself. It begins with preparation, with subtle changes in the body and behavior of the animal. Birds preparing to migrate will eat more than usual, building up fat reserves that will fuel their flight. This is called hyperphagia, a period of increased appetite and feeding that can cause a bird to gain as much as 50% of its body weight in just a few weeks. The fat is stored in specific places, under the skin and around the organs, where it can be easily converted to energy during flight. And the birds do this without conscious thought, without counting calories or worrying about their weight. Their bodies simply know. Hormones shift in response to the changing length of the day, and appetite increases, and the bird eats, and the fat accumulates. And when the time comes to fly, the bird is ready. Some birds also undergo physical changes. Their flight muscles grow larger and stronger. Their digestive organs shrink because they will not need to process as much food during the journey. Their hearts become more efficient. Even their blood changes, becoming better at carrying oxygen, better at fueling the intense effort of long-distance flight. These changes are not permanent. When the bird reaches its destination, its body will shift again, returning to the configuration needed for feeding and breeding and the daily business of life. Migration is not a constant state. It is a phase, a temporary transformation, a mode the animal enters and then exits as naturally as we shift from waking to sleeping and back again. The timing of migration is controlled by an internal clock, a biological rhythm that responds to the changing seasons. Scientists call this a circadian rhythm, meaning it repeats roughly once a year. This clock is set by environmental cues, especially the length of the day, which changes predictably as the Earth orbits the Sun. As the days grow shorter in autumn, certain hormones are released, and the animal begins to feel restless, a state called Zugunruhe in German, which translates to migratory restlessness. Birds in cages will flutter and hop at night during migration season, oriented in the direction they would fly if they were free. They cannot help it. The urge is that strong, that deeply embedded in their biology. But the clock is not rigid. It can be adjusted by local conditions. If the weather is unusually cold or warm, if food is scarce or abundant, the timing of migration can shift by days or even weeks. This flexibility is important because it allows animals to respond to the actual conditions they are experiencing, rather than blindly following a schedule that might not match reality. Migration is both innate and adaptive, both programmed and flexible, a balance between ancient instinct and real-time decision-making. And once the journey begins, the animal must navigate, must find its way across vast distances to a destination it may have never seen. This is where the true magic of migration reveals itself, in the extraordinary sensory abilities that allow animals to perceive things we cannot. Many birds, for example, can sense the Earth's magnetic field. They have cells in their eyes or in their beaks that contain magnetite, a magnetic mineral, or proteins called cryptochromes that respond to magnetic fields. These cells send signals to the brain, creating a sense of direction, a feeling of north and south, that the bird can use to orient itself. It is not a conscious map. It is more like an intuition, a sense of rightness, a feeling that this direction is correct and that direction is not. Some animals navigate by the stars. Indigo buntings, small blue songbirds that migrate at night, learn the pattern of the night sky when they are young, using the rotation of the stars around the North Star to determine which way is north. If you raise these birds in a planetarium and show them a false sky, they will orient according to the false sky, proving that this is learned, not innate. But once learned, the knowledge is reliable. The stars do not change, not on the timescale of a bird's life, and so they provide a steady, trustworthy reference. Other animals use the sun, adjusting for its movement across the sky throughout the day. Bees do this when they navigate back to their hive. Ants do this when they search for food. And migratory animals do this when they travel during the day, constantly recalculating their direction based on the sun's position, using an internal clock to compensate for the fact that the sun moves. This is called time-compensated sun compass navigation, and it requires the animal to know both where the sun is and what time it is, a feat of mental calculation that happens automatically, without conscious effort. And then there are landmarks. Animals remember features of the landscape, mountains and rivers and coastlines, and they use these as guides. Salmon remember the smell of their home stream. Sea turtles remember the magnetic signature of the beach where they hatched. Elephants remember the locations of water holes, even if they have not visited them in years. Memory is a powerful tool for navigation, and many migrating animals rely on it, especially on the final leg of the journey, when they are approaching a specific destination and need precision rather than just general direction. All of these methods work together. A bird might use the stars to orient itself at night, the sun to maintain direction during the day, the magnetic field to sense latitude, and landmarks to recognize when it is getting close to its destination. It is a redundant system, a backup upon backup, ensuring that even if one method fails, others are available. And this redundancy is comforting because it means that migration is robust, reliable, not dependent on a single fragile ability, but supported by multiple, overlapping senses. The journeys continue in ways that feel almost impossible, yet they unfold with quiet certainty year after year. Consider the Arctic tern, a slender bird no larger than your hand, which travels from the Arctic to the Antarctic and back again each year. This small creature completes the longest migration of any animal on Earth, covering roughly 44,000 miles in a single annual cycle. It experiences 2 summers, 2 periods of endless daylight, and sees more daylight than perhaps any other creature alive. The tern does not rush. It glides on air currents, rests on the open ocean, and follows the abundance of fish and krill that bloom in polar waters. There is something deeply restful in knowing that such a tiny bird, weighing less than a bar of soap, can traverse the entire planet with such grace. And then there are the bar-tailed godwits, shorebirds with long, slightly upturned bills and mottled brown feathers. These birds breed in Alaska and migrate to New Zealand, a journey of over 7,000 miles. What makes this migration especially remarkable is that they complete it without stopping. They fly nonstop for 8 or 9 days, crossing the vast Pacific Ocean with no place to land, no place to feed, no place to rest. Before they depart, they prepare their bodies carefully. They eat voraciously, building up fat reserves that will fuel the entire journey. Their organs shrink to save weight. Their intestines, liver, and kidneys become smaller, making room for more fat. Their heart and chest muscles, however, grow larger and stronger. It is a transformation, a quiet reshaping of the body to meet the demands of an extraordinary task. And then they lift off, trusting the wind, trusting their internal compass, trusting that the distant islands will be there when they arrive. Hummingbirds, those tiny jewels that hover at flowers in your garden, are also migrants. The ruby-throated hummingbird, common in eastern North America, flies across the Gulf of Mexico twice a year. This is a journey of about 500 miles over open water, with no place to stop, no flowers to sip from, no perch to rest upon. The hummingbird weighs about as much as a penny. Before migration, it doubles its body weight by storing fat, transforming from 3 grams to 6. Then it flies, beating its wings up to 50 times per second for up to 20 hours straight. The energy required is immense, yet the bird completes the journey with a kind of effortless determination. It does not panic. It does not falter. It simply flies, guided by instinct and the ancient rhythms encoded in its tiny body. Dragonflies, those delicate insects with transparent wings, also migrate. The globe skimmer dragonfly undertakes one of the longest insect migrations known, traveling across the Indian Ocean, from India to East Africa and back, a round trip of over 11,000 miles. This journey spans multiple generations. No single dragonfly completes the entire circuit. Instead, they breed along the way, and their offspring continue the journey. It is a relay, a passing of the baton across time and space. The dragonflies follow the rains, timing their movements to coincide with monsoons, which bring the standing water they need for breeding. They ride the wind, sometimes at altitudes of several thousand feet, drifting across vast stretches of ocean. There is something profoundly peaceful in imagining these fragile creatures, no heavier than a feather, crossing oceans on invisible currents of air. Bats, 2. Are migrants, though we often think of them as creatures of the night, staying close to caves and familiar roosts. The Mexican free-tailed bat migrates in huge numbers from Mexico to the southern United States each spring. Millions of bats travel together, forming enormous colonies in places like Bracken Cave in Texas, where up to 20 million bats gather. They fly at night, navigating by echolocation and memory, feeding on insects as they go. In the fall, they return south, following the warmth and the abundance of food. The journey is not frantic. It is steady, purposeful, a flow of wings and soft chirps moving through the darkness. Sea turtles are among the most ancient of migrants, having traveled the oceans for over 100 million years. The loggerhead sea turtle, for example, hatches on a beach, scrambles to the ocean, and then spends years drifting across entire ocean basins. Young loggerheads born in Japan may travel across the Pacific to the coast of California, then back again, a journey of thousands of miles that can take a decade. When they reach maturity, they return to the very beach where they were born to lay their own eggs. How they find their way back is still not entirely understood, but it is believed they use the Earth's magnetic field as a map, sensing subtle variations that guide them home. The turtle does not hurry. It swims slowly, steadily, trusting the currents and the ancient knowledge held within its body. Eels undertake one of the most mysterious migrations in the animal kingdom. European and American eels are born in the Sargasso Sea, a region of the Atlantic Ocean characterized by floating mats of sargassum seaweed. The tiny, transparent larvae drift on ocean currents for months or even years, slowly making their way to the coasts of Europe or North America. Once they reach freshwater rivers and streams, they transform into elvers, small, slender eels, and swim upstream. They live in rivers, lakes, and ponds for many years, growing and feeding. Then, when they reach maturity, they undergo another transformation. Their eyes grow larger, their skin darkens, and they stop eating. They begin the long journey back to the Sargasso Sea, swimming thousands of miles across the ocean to spawn and die. No one has ever observed eels spawning in the wild. It remains one of the ocean's quiet secrets, a journey completed in the deep, dark waters far from human eyes. Wildebeest are perhaps the most iconic land migrants, known for their dramatic river crossings in East Africa. Over 1 million wildebeest, along with hundreds of thousands of zebras and gazelles, move in a circular route through the Serengeti and Masai Mara, following the rains and the fresh grass that springs up in their wake. The migration is constant, a slow, rolling wave of hooves and dust. The wildebeest do not follow a single leader. Instead, they move as a collective, responding to subtle cues in the environment. The smell of rain, the sight of distant storms, the taste of new grass. When they reach a river, they hesitate, gathering at the banks, until suddenly, as if by unspoken agreement, they plunge in. Thousands of animals enter the water at once, swimming across strong currents, clambering up steep banks on the other side. Some do not make it, but the herd moves on, driven by the need to find food and water. There is no malice in this, no cruelty. It is simply the way of things, the rhythm of life on the savanna. Zebras migrate alongside the wildebeest, but they have their own role in the ecosystem. Zebras are grazers that prefer taller, coarser grasses. They eat first, clearing the way for wildebeest, which prefer shorter, more tender shoots. This partnership, though not deliberate, benefits both species. The zebras open up the landscape, and the wildebeest follow, taking advantage of the newly accessible grass. It is a quiet cooperation, a balance maintained through countless generations. Gazelles, too, join the migration, moving in smaller, more scattered groups. Thompson's gazelles, with their delicate legs and constant, flickering tails, are among the most graceful of the migrants. They are alert, always watching for predators, yet they move with a kind of calm efficiency. They do not waste energy. They graze, they walk, they rest. The migration is not a race. It is a rhythm, a slow dance across the plains. Elephants migrate in search of water and food, especially during the dry season. In places like Botswana and Namibia, elephant herds travel hundreds of miles between water sources, following ancient paths that have been used for generations. The matriarch, the oldest and most experienced female, leads the herd. She remembers where the water holes are, where the best feeding grounds lie, where danger has been encountered in the past. Her memory is the map. The younger elephants follow, learning the routes, absorbing the knowledge that will one day allow them to lead. The elephants move slowly, stopping to feed, to rest, to play. There is no urgency, only a steady, patient progress toward the next source of life. Bison once migrated across the Great Plains of North America in herds that numbered in the millions. They moved with the seasons, following the growth of prairie grasses, avoiding deep snow in winter, seeking out mineral licks and water sources. The migration shaped the landscape, creating trails that were later used by indigenous peoples and, eventually, by settlers. The bison were nearly driven to extinction in the 19th century, but small populations survived, and today, thanks to conservation efforts, bison are slowly returning. In places like Yellowstone National Park, bison still migrate, moving between summer and winter ranges, following the same ancient rhythms that guided their ancestors. Pronghorn, often mistaken for antelope, are the fastest land animals in North America, capable of running at speeds over 50 miles per hour. They migrate between summer and winter ranges in the American West, traveling through Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. One population, known as the Path of the Pronghorn, travels over 150 miles each way, one of the longest land migrations in the continental United States. The pronghorn move quickly when needed, but much of their migration is a steady, unhurried walk. They navigate fences, roads, and human development, following corridors that are increasingly threatened. Conservationists work to protect these routes, ensuring that the pronghorn can continue their ancient journey. Reindeer, also known as caribou, migrate in vast herds across the Arctic tundra. The porcupine caribou herd, for example, travels over 3,000 miles each year, one of the longest terrestrial migrations on Earth. They move between calving grounds on the coastal plain of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge and wintering areas in the boreal forests of Canada and Alaska. The migration is timed to the seasons, to the melting of snow, to the emergence of new plant growth. The caribou are built for this journey. Their large, concave hooves act like snowshoes in winter and paddles in summer, allowing them to traverse deep snow and swim across rivers. Their thick fur insulates them against the cold. They move together, a river of brown and white, flowing across the tundra with a quiet, unstoppable determination. Saiga antelope, with their distinctive bulbous noses, migrate across the steppes of Central Asia. Their unusual noses filter dust in summer and warm, cold air in winter, adaptations to the harsh, open landscapes they inhabit. Saiga once migrated in herds of hundreds of thousands, but their numbers have declined dramatically due to poaching and disease. Still, the remaining populations continue to migrate, moving between seasonal pastures, following the rains and the growth of grasses. Conservation efforts are underway to protect these herds and the landscapes they depend on. Monarch butterflies are perhaps the most famous insect migrants. Each fall, millions of monarchs from eastern North America travel up to 3,000 miles to overwintering sites in the mountains of central Mexico. They cluster in oyamel fir trees, covering the branches so thickly that the trees appear orange and black. The butterflies enter a state of semi-dormancy, conserving energy through the winter. In spring, they begin the journey north, but no single butterfly completes the round trip. The monarchs that leave Mexico breed along the way, and it is their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren that eventually reach the northern breeding grounds. The final generation of the year, known as the super generation, is different. These butterflies live much longer than their parents, up to 8 months instead of few weeks. They are the ones that make the long journey south, guided by an internal compass that orients them using the position of the sun and the Earth's magnetic field. It is a journey of trust, of instinct, of quiet, fluttering wings carrying a fragile body across an entire continent. Painted lady butterflies also migrate, and their journey is one of the longest of any butterfly. They travel from North Africa to the Arctic Circle and back, a round trip of up to 9,000 miles. Like monarchs, No single butterfly completes the entire journey. Instead, the migration spans multiple generations, each one continuing the path begun by their ancestors. The painted ladies fly high, sometimes at altitudes of over 3,000 feet, riding the wind, moving steadily northward in spring and summer, then southward in fall. They are small, delicate, yet they cross deserts, mountains, and seas. Locusts, though often seen as pests, are also remarkable migrants. Desert locusts can form swarms containing billions of individuals, covering hundreds of square miles. These swarms move in search of food, traveling with the wind, sometimes crossing entire continents. A single swarm can consume as much food in one day as 35,000 people. Yet the locusts are not inherently destructive. They are simply responding to environmental conditions, to the availability of food, to the rhythms of rain and drought. In their solitary phase, locusts are harmless, living quietly in arid regions. It is only when conditions become favorable, when rains bring a sudden abundance of vegetation, that they transform, becoming gregarious, forming swarms, and beginning their migration. Ladybugs, those small, spotted beetles beloved by gardeners, also migrate. In the fall, ladybugs gather in large groups and fly to higher elevations, seeking sheltered spots where they can overwinter. They cluster together in crevices, under bark, in caves, sometimes forming aggregations of thousands or even millions of individuals. The clustering helps them survive the cold, conserving heat and moisture. In spring, they disperse, flying back down to lower elevations, spreading out across fields and gardens, feeding on aphids and other pests. The migration is short, but it is essential for their survival. Spiders, surprisingly, can also migrate, though their method is quite different. Many young spiders engage in a behavior called ballooning. They climb to a high point, release strands of silk, and allow the wind to carry them away. Some spiders have been found thousands of feet in the air, drifting on air currents, traveling hundreds of miles. It is a passive migration, a letting go, a trust in the wind to carry them to new places. Most do not survive, but those that do colonize new habitats, spreading the species across vast distances. Whales are among the most majestic of all migrants. The gray whale, as mentioned earlier, travels along the Pacific coast, but other whales undertake equally impressive journeys. Humpback whales migrate from feeding grounds in polar waters to breeding grounds in tropical seas. They travel thousands of miles, often without feeding during the journey, relying on the fat reserves they build up during the summer. Humpbacks are known for their songs, complex vocalizations that can last for hours and be heard over vast distances underwater. The songs change over time, evolving as whales learn from one another. During migration, the whales are often silent, conserving energy, moving steadily through the deep blue water. Blue whales, the largest animals ever to have lived on Earth, also migrate. They feed in the rich, cold waters of the poles, consuming up to 4 tons of krill per day. In winter, they move toward warmer waters to breed and give birth. Blue whales are solitary or travel in small groups, moving quietly through the ocean, their immense bodies gliding through the water with surprising grace. Despite their size, they are gentle, feeding on some of the smallest creatures in the sea. Sperm whales dive to incredible depths in search of food, descending over 3,000 feet to hunt giant squid in the dark, cold waters of the deep ocean. They can hold their breath for over an hour, moving slowly through the blackness, using echolocation to find their prey. Sperm whales migrate between feeding and breeding areas, traveling across entire ocean basins. They live in matriarchal groups, with females and young staying together while males roam more widely, venturing into colder, more productive waters. Orcas, or killer whales, are found in every ocean, and different populations have different migration patterns. Some orcas are resident, staying in one area year-round, while others are transient, traveling widely in search of food. Resident orcas often feed on fish, particularly salmon, and their movements are tied to the migrations of their prey. Transient orcas hunt marine mammals, seals, sea lions, even other whales, and they move more unpredictably, following the movements of their prey. Orcas are highly intelligent, living in tight-knit family groups, communicating with complex vocalizations, cooperating in hunts. Their migration is not just a physical journey, but a social one, a movement of families and cultures across the ocean. Seals and sea lions also migrate, though their movements are often more localized. Northern elephant seals, for example, breed on beaches along the California coast, then disperse into the open ocean, traveling thousands of miles in search of food. They dive deep, sometimes over a mile below the surface, hunting fish and squid in the cold, dark waters. They spend months at sea, rarely coming to the surface except to breathe, then return to the beaches to breed, molt, and rest. The cycle repeats year after year, a rhythm of ocean and shore, of solitude and congregation. Walruses migrate with the sea ice, moving north in summer as the ice retreats, and south in winter as it advances. They feed on clams and other bottom-dwelling invertebrates, using their sensitive whiskers to find prey in the murky water. Walruses are social animals, gathering in large haulouts on ice floes or beaches, resting together, their tusks clacking, their deep vocalizations echoing across the water. As the Arctic warms and sea ice diminishes, walruses are forced to travel farther, to haul out on land more often, adapting to a changing world. Penguins, though flightless, are remarkable migrants in their own way. Emperor penguins, the largest of all penguin species, breed on the sea ice of Antarctica during the brutal Antarctic winter. After the female lays a single egg, she transfers it to the male, who balances it on his feet, covered by a warm fold of skin. The female then walks up to 50 miles across the ice to the open ocean, where she feeds for weeks. The male fasts, standing in temperatures that can drop to -40 degrees Fahrenheit, huddling with other males for warmth. When the chick hatches, the female returns, and the male, having lost nearly half his body weight, makes the journey to the ocean to feed. It is a migration of endurance, of patience, of quiet sacrifice. Adelie penguins migrate between their breeding colonies on the Antarctic coast and the pack ice where they feed. They travel by swimming, diving deep to catch krill and fish, then return to the colonies to breed. The journey is not long in distance, but it is challenging, navigating through icy waters, avoiding predators like leopard seals and orcas. The penguins move with purpose, their streamlined bodies cutting through the water, their flippers propelling them forward with powerful strokes. Albatrosses are the ultimate ocean wanderers. These large seabirds spend most of their lives at sea, gliding on the wind, covering thousands of miles with barely a flap of their wings. The wandering albatross, the largest of all albatrosses, has a wingspan of up to 11 feet, the longest of any living bird. They use a technique called dynamic soaring, exploiting the gradient of wind speed above the ocean surface to gain energy, allowing them to fly for hours without flapping. Albatrosses return to land only to breed, gathering on remote islands in the Southern Ocean. They mate for life, performing elaborate courtship dances, and raise a single chick every 2 years. The rest of the time, they are at sea, riding the wind, circling the globe, alone yet perfectly at home in the vastness of the ocean. Shearwaters are smaller seabirds that also undertake long migrations. The sooty shearwater breeds in New Zealand and southern South America, then migrates to the North Pacific and North Atlantic, traveling in a figure-8 pattern that covers over 40,000 miles each year. They feed on fish and squid, diving deep beneath the surface, using their wings to fly underwater. Shearwaters are social, often feeding in large flocks, their dark bodies skimming low over the waves, their calls echoing across the water. Storks are long-legged wading birds known for their impressive migrations. The white stork breeds in Europe and winters in Africa, traveling thousands of miles each year. Storks migrate by soaring on thermals, rising columns of warm air that lift them high into the sky. They glide from thermal to thermal, conserving energy, barely flapping their wings. Storks often follow traditional routes, crossing at narrow points like the Strait of Gibraltar or the Bosphorus, where thousands of birds can be seen passing overhead in a single day. They are silent flyers, moving with a slow, graceful rhythm, their long necks extended, their legs trailing behind. Cranes are another group of long-distance migrants. The Siberian crane, one of the rarest cranes in the world, breeds in the Russian Arctic and winters in China, Iran, and India, traveling up to 3,000 miles. Cranes fly in V formations, taking turns at the front, where the air resistance is greatest. They call to each other in flight, their loud, trumpeting voices carrying across the sky, keeping the flock together. Cranes are symbols of longevity and good fortune in many cultures, and their migration is celebrated in festivals and stories around the world. Swallows are small, agile birds that migrate between continents. The barn swallow, one of the most widespread bird species in the world, breeds across North America, Europe, and Asia, and winters in South America, Africa, and Southern Asia. Swallows feed on insects, catching them in midair with acrobatic twists and turns. They migrate during the day, often flying low over fields and water, their forked tails flicking as they maneuver. Swallows are harbingers of spring in many places, their arrival marking the end of winter, the return of warmth and life. Nightingales, famous for their beautiful songs, are also migrants. They breed in Europe and parts of Asia and winter in sub-Saharan Africa. Nightingales migrate at night, navigating by the stars, their small bodies flitting through the darkness. During the breeding season, the males sing complex, melodious songs, often at night, to attract mates and defend territories. The song is rich and varied, full of trills, whistles, and warbles, a sound that has inspired poets and musicians for centuries. Warblers are small, often brightly colored birds that migrate long distances. The blackpoll warbler, for example, breeds in the boreal forests of Canada and Alaska and winters in South America. In the fall, many blackpolls fly nonstop over the Atlantic Ocean, a journey of over 1,800 miles that can take up to 3 days. They prepare by doubling their body weight, storing fat that will fuel the journey. Once they take off, there is no turning back, no place to rest. They fly through day and night, trusting the wind, trusting their instincts, until they reach the coast of South America. Thrushes, including species like the American robin and the European blackbird, are also migrants. The Swainson's thrush breeds in North America and winters in Central and South America, traveling thousands of miles each year. Thrushes migrate at night, flying alone or in loose flocks, navigating by the stars and the Earth's magnetic field. During the day, they rest and feed, building up energy for the next leg of the journey. Their migration is quiet, unnoticed by most people, yet it is a journey of remarkable endurance and precision. The migrations we've been following continue to reveal their gentle mysteries as we move deeper into the patterns that connect Earth and sky and water. There are journeys happening right now, in darkness and in daylight, that unfold with a patience older than mountains. Let us drift a little further into these calm rhythms, discovering more about the travelers who share this world with us. Consider the ruby-throated hummingbird once more, but from a different angle. Before these tiny birds attempt their crossing of the Gulf of Mexico, they engage in a behavior called hyperphagia, which simply means intense feeding. For several weeks, they visit flower after flower, consuming nectar and small insects almost constantly. Their body weight can nearly double during this time. This extra mass is not bulk or muscle, but pure fat, stored carefully in preparation. The hummingbird does not worry or plan consciously. Its body simply knows, through ancient instruction written in genes, that the journey ahead requires fuel, and so it feeds, calmly and persistently, until the moment comes to fly. The wandering albatross, which we touched upon earlier, spends most of its life over the open ocean, riding air currents with wings that can span 11 feet from tip to tip. These birds have a special tendon in their wings that locks the wing in an extended position, allowing them to glide for hours without flapping. They use a technique called dynamic soaring, rising and falling through layers of wind at different speeds, extracting energy from the gradient itself. It is a form of flight so efficient that the bird expends almost no energy at all. The albatross does not fight the wind. It listens to it, leans into it, becomes part of it. This is migration not as struggle, but as conversation with the atmosphere. There are fish that migrate vertically, not horizontally. In the deep ocean, countless species participate in what scientists call the vertical migration, the largest movement of biomass on Earth. Each night, as the sun sets and darkness spreads across the surface, billions of small fish, squid, krill, and plankton rise from the depths toward the surface to feed. As dawn approaches, they descend again, retreating into the cool, dark safety of deeper water. This happens every single day, all across the world's oceans. It is a migration measured not in miles, but in hundreds of feet, a gentle rising and falling that follows the light. The creatures are not fleeing. They're simply moving with the rhythm of day and night, feeding when it is safe, resting when it is wise. Bats, too, are migrants, though we often think of them as stationary creatures of the night. The Mexican free-tailed bat, for instance, travels between Mexico and the southwestern United States each year. Millions of these bats emerge from caves at dusk during migration season, forming great spiraling columns that rise into the sky like living tornadoes. They travel at night, navigating by echolocation and memory, feeding on insects as they go. Their migration is timed to coincide with the blooming of certain plants and the emergence of moth populations. The bats do not hurry. They move steadily, resting during the day in caves or under bridges, resuming their journey each evening. It is a quiet, methodical passage, hidden from most human eyes. In the rivers of Europe, there is a small fish called the European smelt that migrates upstream to spawn, much like salmon. But the smelt's journey is shorter, gentler. These fish move from coastal waters into rivers and streams when the water temperature and flow are just right. They do not leap waterfalls or battle strong currents. They simply swim steadily upstream, guided by the scent of the water, until they reach the quiet shallows where they were born. There, they release their eggs and milt, and then, unlike salmon, many of them survive and return to the sea. The smelt's migration is a reminder that not all journeys end in sacrifice. Some are circular, renewable, a gentle loop that can be traveled many times. The spiny lobster, found in warm waters around the world, migrates in a way that seems almost ceremonial. When autumn storms stir the coastal waters, these lobsters form long, single-file lines on the ocean floor and begin walking. They march across the sand and rock, sometimes 50 or more in a line, each lobster touching the one in front with its antennae. They are moving to deeper water where the temperature is more stable and the currents less violent. The line formation reduces drag and helps each lobster navigate. There is no leader giving orders. Each animal simply follows the one ahead, and the line moves as one organism, slow and purposeful. It is cooperation without language, trust without thought. In the forests of North America, the American woodcock migrates between breeding grounds in the northern United States and Canada and wintering grounds in the southern United States. This plump, short-legged bird is known for its elaborate courtship displays, but its migration is quiet and unassuming. Woodcocks travel at night, flying alone or in small groups, navigating by the stars. They fly low, just above the treetops, and they often stop to rest and feed in fields and forest clearings. Their migration is not a race. It is a series of short flights, each one bringing them a little closer to their destination. They move with the patience of a bird that knows the forest will still be there tomorrow. There are insects beyond butterflies and dragonflies that migrate as well. The painted lady butterfly, a close relative of the monarch, undertakes one of the longest insect migrations in the world. These butterflies travel from North Africa, across Europe, and all the way to the Arctic Circle, a journey of thousands of miles spread across multiple generations. Each butterfly lives only a few weeks, but together, as a lineage, they complete a round trip that spans continents and seasons. The painted lady does not know its ancestors, yet it follows the same route, guided by instinct and the angle of the sun. It is a migration written not in memory, but in biology. The bar-headed goose, which we have not yet mentioned, is one of the highest flying migrants in the world. These geese travel from their breeding grounds in Central Asia to wintering areas in India, crossing the Himalayas along the way. They have been observed flying at altitudes above 20,000 feet, where the air is thin and cold and oxygen is scarce. To survive this, The bar-headed goose has evolved larger lungs, more efficient hemoglobin, and a unique breathing pattern that allows it to extract more oxygen from each breath. The geese do not avoid the mountains. They fly directly over them, riding updrafts and tailwinds, their bodies perfectly adapted to the challenge. It is not bravery. It is simply the way they are made. In the deserts of the southwestern United States, the lesser long-nosed bat migrates north from Mexico each spring to feed on the nectar of blooming agave and cactus flowers. These bats are pollinators, and their migration is timed to match the flowering season of the plants they depend on. As they travel, they move from flower to flower, transferring pollen and ensuring the reproduction of the desert plants. In return, the plants provide the bats with energy-rich nectar. It is a migration built on mutualism, a partnership between species that benefits both. The bats do not take more than they need. They sip, they move on, and the desert blooms in their wake. Some migrations are so slow, they are almost invisible. The Galapagos tortoise, for instance, migrates seasonally between the highlands and lowlands of the islands. During the wet season, the tortoises move to higher elevations where fresh vegetation is abundant. During the dry season, they descend to the lowlands where certain plants remain green. The journey may take weeks, and the tortoise may travel only a few miles, but it is a migration nonetheless. The tortoise does not rush. It moves one slow step at a time, pausing to eat, to rest, to bask in the sun. Its migration is a meditation, a practice of patience that has continued for millions of years. In the cold waters of the North Atlantic, the Atlantic puffin migrates from its breeding colonies on coastal cliffs to spend the winter far out at sea. These small, colorful birds are excellent swimmers, using their wings to fly underwater as they hunt for fish. During migration, puffins may travel hundreds of miles from land, floating on the open ocean, diving for food, and riding out storms with calm resilience. They do not return to land until spring, when the urge to breed draws them back to the cliffs. The puffin's migration is a journey into solitude, a winter spent alone on the waves, waiting for the season to turn. The Swainson's hawk, a raptor of the Americas, migrates farther than almost any other bird of prey. Each autumn, these hawks travel from their breeding grounds in North America all the way to the grasslands of Argentina, a journey of up to 14,000 miles. They travel in flocks, sometimes numbering in the thousands, soaring on thermals to conserve energy. The hawks do not hunt much during migration. Instead, they rely on fat reserves built up before departure. They move steadily, day after day, crossing forests, plains, deserts, and mountains. When they reach Argentina, they rest and feed, and then, in spring, they make the return journey. It is one of the longest migrations of any raptor, and it happens twice a year, every year, with quiet reliability. There are crabs that migrate too. The Christmas Island red crab, found on a small island in the Indian Ocean, undertakes one of the most spectacular mass migrations in the animal kingdom. Each year, triggered by the arrival of the wet season, millions of red crabs emerge from the forest floor and march toward the coast to breed. The entire island becomes a moving carpet of red as the crabs walk, climb, and scramble over every obstacle in their path. They cross roads, gardens, and cliffs, driven by an ancient imperative. When they reach the ocean, the females release their eggs into the water, and then, after a brief rest, the crabs return to the forest. The migration is brief but total, a moment when the island belongs entirely to the crabs. In the rivers of South America, the Amazonian catfish migrates upstream from the river's mouth near the Atlantic Ocean all the way to the headwaters in the Andes Mountains, a journey of more than 2,000 miles. This is one of the longest freshwater migrations in the world. The catfish travel slowly, feeding as they go, moving with the seasonal floods that bring nutrients and new habitats. They spawn in the clear, fast-flowing streams of the mountains, and then their offspring drift downstream, carried by the current back toward the Amazon basin. It is a migration that connects the ocean to the mountains, the lowlands to the highlands, a journey that traces the entire length of the world's greatest river. The common cuckoo, a bird known for its distinctive call and its habit of laying eggs in other birds' nests, is also a long-distance migrant. Cuckoos breed in Europe and Asia, and then fly south to spend the winter in Africa. What is remarkable is that young cuckoos, raised by foster parents of a different species, migrate alone. They have never met their biological parents, never seen the route, yet they find their way to the correct wintering grounds, thousands of miles away. The route is encoded in their genes, a map written in DNA. The young cuckoo does not need to be taught. It simply knows. It waits until the time is right, and then it flies, alone, into the unknown, trusting the ancient instructions within. In the Pacific Ocean, the sooty shearwater migrates in a vast figure-8 pattern, traveling from breeding colonies in New Zealand across the Pacific to feeding grounds off the coasts of Japan, Alaska, and California, and then back again. The entire journey can cover more than 40,000 miles in a single year. These birds spend most of their lives in flight or on the water, rarely touching land except to breed. They feed on fish and squid, diving deep beneath the surface, and they navigate using the sun, the stars, and the Earth's magnetic field. The sooty shearwater's migration is a circumnavigation, a journey that embraces the entire Pacific, year after year, with tireless grace. There are migrations that happen underground. The red-sided garter snake, found in parts of Canada and the northern United States, migrates each spring from communal dens where thousands of snakes spend the winter together. When the snow melts and the ground warms, the snakes emerge and travel overland to summer feeding areas in wetlands and meadows. They move slowly, basking in the sun to warm their bodies, stopping often to rest. In autumn, they return to the same dens, guided by scent trails and memory. The migration is short, often just a few miles, but it is essential. The snakes cannot survive the winter without the protection of the communal den, and they cannot thrive in summer without the abundance of the wetlands. The Arctic fox, a small predator of the far north, migrates in response to the availability of food. In years when lemming populations are high, the foxes may stay in one area, but when lemmings are scarce, the foxes travel vast distances across the sea ice, sometimes covering hundreds of miles in search of food. They have been recorded traveling from the Canadian Arctic to Greenland, crossing frozen ocean and enduring extreme cold. The fox does not migrate on a fixed schedule. It migrates when it must, when survival demands movement. It is a flexible, opportunistic migration, shaped by the unpredictable rhythms of the Arctic ecosystem. In the waters off the coast of California, the market squid migrates from deeper offshore waters to shallow coastal areas to spawn. The squid gather in large aggregations, and the females lay their eggs on the sandy bottom, attaching them in clusters that look like small white flowers. After spawning, the adults die, completing their life cycle. The eggs hatch, and the young squid drift out to sea, beginning their own journey. The migration of the market squid is brief and final, a one-way trip that ends in reproduction and death. It is not sad. It is simply the way of the squid, a life lived quickly and completely, with no wasted time. The white stork, a large bird of Europe, Asia, and Africa, migrates between breeding grounds in Europe and wintering grounds in sub-Saharan Africa. Storks are soaring birds, relying on thermals to carry them aloft, and they avoid crossing large bodies of water where thermals are weak. As a result, European storks funnel through narrow land corridors, such as the Strait of Gibraltar and the Bosphorus, where thousands of birds can be seen migrating together. The storks travel during the day, circling upward in thermals and then gliding forward, losing altitude gradually until they find the next thermal. It is a slow, energy-efficient way to travel, and it allows the storks to cover thousands of miles with minimal effort. In the rivers of North America, the American shad migrates from the ocean into rivers to spawn, much like salmon. Shad are members of the herring family, and they travel in large schools, moving upstream in spring when the water warms. They do not travel as far as salmon, and they do not always die after spawning. Some shad, especially those on the Atlantic coast, survive to spawn multiple times. The migration is timed to the blooming of the shad bush, a shrub that flowers along riverbanks in early spring. The connection between fish and flower is so reliable that people once used the blooming of the shad bush as a sign that the shad were running. It is a migration woven into the culture and ecology of the rivers. The red knot, a small shorebird, migrates from its breeding ground in the high Arctic to wintering areas as far south as Tierra del Fuego, at the southern tip of South America. This is one of the longest migrations of any bird, covering up to 9,000 miles each way. The red knot travels in stages, stopping at key sites along the way to rest and refuel. One of the most important stopover sites is Delaware Bay, where the birds arrive and mate to feed on the eggs of horseshoe crabs. The timing is critical. The crabs spawn in late spring, and their eggs are rich in fat and protein, exactly what the red knots need to complete their journey. The migration of the red knot depends on the migration of the horseshoe crab, a connection between species separated by millions of years of evolution. In the forests of Central and South America, the three-wattled bellbird migrates altitudinally, moving up and down mountainsides in response to the availability of fruit. These birds have one of the loudest calls in the bird world, a ringing metallic sound that can be heard from far away. They feed on fruit from trees in the laurel family, and they follow the fruiting season as it moves up the mountain in the dry season and down the mountain in the wet season. The bellbird's migration is a vertical journey, a response to the changing abundance of food at different elevations. It is a reminder that migration is not always about distance. Sometimes it is about altitude, about moving through layers of habitat to find what is needed. The leatherback sea turtle, the largest of all turtles, migrates across entire ocean basins in search of jellyfish, its primary food. Leatherbacks have been tracked traveling from nesting beaches in the Caribbean all the way to feeding grounds off the coast of Canada, and from beaches in Indonesia to the waters off California. They dive to depths of over 4,000 feet, deeper than almost any other air-breathing animal, and they can maintain their body temperature even in cold water, thanks to a unique circulatory system and a thick layer of fat. The leatherback's migration is a journey into the deep, a slow, patient search for food in the vastness of the ocean. The turtle does not hurry. It dives, it feeds, it surfaces, it breathes, and it continues. In the grasslands of Mongolia, the Mongolian gazelle migrates in large herds across the open steppe, following the rains and the growth of fresh grass. These gazelles can travel hundreds of miles, and their movements are unpredictable, shifting in response to weather and forage availability. The herds are not led by a single animal. Instead, they move as a collective, each gazelle responding to the behavior of its neighbors. When one animal starts to move, others follow, and soon the entire herd is in motion. It is a migration without a map, a journey shaped by the immediate needs of the group and the conditions of the land. The gazelles do not plan. They respond, and in responding, they survive. The Manx shearwater, a seabird that breeds on islands off the coast of the United Kingdom, migrates to the coast of South America for the winter. These birds are nocturnal on their breeding islands, returning to their burrows only after dark to avoid predators. During migration, they fly day and night, covering vast distances over the open ocean. Young Manx shearwaters leave the nest and fly directly to South America, alone, without guidance from their parents. They navigate using the stars and the Earth's magnetic field, and they arrive at the wintering grounds with remarkable precision. It is a solo journey, a leap of faith made by a bird that has never flown before, and yet it succeeds year after year. In the rivers of Southeast Asia, the giant Mekong catfish migrates upstream to spawn, though much about this migration remains a mystery. These enormous fish, which can weigh over 600 pounds, are critically endangered, and their migration routes have been disrupted by dams and overfishing. What is known is that the catfish travel long distances, moving from the lower Mekong River in Vietnam and Cambodia to spawning grounds in northern Thailand and Laos. The migration is timed to the monsoon rains, which raise the water level and open pathways that are otherwise impassable. The catfish move slowly, steadily, through murky water, guided by currents and chemical cues. It is a journey that has become more difficult in recent years, but the fish continue to try, driven by the ancient need to reproduce. The yellow warbler, a small songbird of North and South America, migrates thousands of miles between breeding and wintering grounds. These birds are bright and cheerful, often seen flitting through willows and shrubs near water. During migration, they travel at night, navigating by the stars, and they stop during the day to feed on insects. The yellow warbler is one of many small songbirds that make this journey, and together, They form a great wave of migration that sweeps across the Americas each spring and fall. The warblers do not travel alone. They move in loose flocks, calling to each other in the darkness, staying connected even when they cannot see. It is a migration built on sound, on the quiet reassurance of voices in the night. In the deserts of Australia, the budgerigar, a small parrot, migrates nomadically in response to rainfall. These birds do not follow a fixed route or schedule. Instead, they wander across the arid interior, searching for areas where recent rains have brought water and seeds. When they find a suitable location, they settle, breed quickly, and then move on when the resources are exhausted. The budgerigar's migration is unpredictable, shaped entirely by the erratic patterns of desert rain. It is a migration without a destination, a continuous search for abundance in a landscape that offers it only briefly and in scattered places. The birds do not worry about the future. They live in the present, moving when they must, resting when they can. The osprey, a fish-eating raptor found on every continent except Antarctica, migrates between breeding grounds in the northern hemisphere and wintering grounds in the tropics. Ospreys are solitary migrants, each bird traveling alone, yet they often follow similar routes, using coastlines and river valleys as guides. They hunt as they travel, plunging into water to catch fish, and they rest in tall trees or on cliffs. The osprey's migration is a journey of independence, a solo flight that requires skill, strength, and patience. The bird does not need company. It needs only fish, water, and the open sky. In the oceans, the blue shark migrates across entire ocean basins, following the movements of prey and the boundaries of warm and cold water. Blue sharks have been tracked traveling from the coast of New England to the coast of South America, and from Europe to the Caribbean. They are tireless swimmers, moving constantly, their sleek bodies perfectly adapted to a life in motion. The blue shark's migration is a journey without rest, a continuous patrol of the open ocean. The shark does not sleep in the way we understand sleep. It keeps moving, always, because movement is life and stillness is death. The sandhill crane, which we have mentioned before, also migrates in smaller, less famous groups across different parts of North America. Not all sandhill cranes gather in massive flocks. Some populations are smaller, quieter, moving through mountain valleys and along rivers with less fanfare. These cranes still call, still fly in formation, still follow the ancient routes, but they do so away from the eyes of thousands of human observers. Their migration is no less real, no less important. It is simply more private, a quiet passage through wild places, witnessed only by the land itself. And softly, we turn to the migrations that happen beneath our awareness. The journeys so subtle, they almost seem to belong to dream. Consider the European hedgehog, a small mammal wrapped in spines, moving slowly through gardens and meadows as the seasons turn. Hedgehogs do not travel vast distances, but they migrate nonetheless, shifting their territories as food becomes scarce and temperatures drop. In autumn, they wander in search of the perfect hibernation site, a quiet corner beneath leaves or logs where they can sleep through winter's cold. Their migration is measured in meters, not miles, yet it is no less essential. They move with purpose, testing each potential refuge, sensing temperature and safety, until they find the place that feels right. Then they curl into themselves, lower their heartbeat, and disappear into stillness. It is a migration inward as much as outward, a journey into survival's deepest rest. In the rivers of North America, another ancient traveler stirs. The paddlefish, a creature that has existed for more than 300 million years, moves upstream each spring to spawn. Its body is long and smooth, its snout extended into a flat, paddle-like rostrum that sweeps through the water, detecting plankton with electroreceptors. Paddlefish are filter feeders, drifting through rivers with mouths open, gathering microscopic life. But when the time comes to reproduce, they leave their quiet feeding grounds and swim against the current, seeking gravel beds and shallow, flowing water. They do not leap like salmon, nor do they struggle dramatically. They simply persist, moving steadily upstream, guided by the same impulses that moved their ancestors before the dinosaurs walked. Their migration is a thread connecting the present to an almost unimaginable past, a living fossil tracing the same path it has always known. Beneath the surface of tropical oceans, manta rays glide in slow, graceful arcs, their wingspans stretching up to 7 meters. These gentle giants are filter feeders, consuming plankton and small fish as they soar through the water. Mantas migrate along coastlines and between islands, following concentrations of food that shift with currents and seasons. They gather at cleaning stations, where smaller fish remove parasites from their skin, and they return to these places year after year, suggesting memory and recognition. Mantas are often seen leaping from the water, their enormous bodies briefly airborne before crashing back with a resounding splash. Scientists are not entirely certain why they leap. It may be to remove parasites, to communicate, or simply for the joy of movement. Whatever the reason, it is a reminder that migration is not only about survival. It can also be about expression, about the pleasure of being alive in a body built for motion. In the forests of Central and South America, a small, jewel-toned bird called the resplendent quetzal undertakes a vertical migration. Rather than traveling north or south, the quetzal moves up and down the mountainside, following the fruiting cycles of wild avocados, its primary food. During the breeding season, quetzal nest in cloud forests at higher elevations, where temperatures are cool and mist clings to the trees. But when the avocados ripen at lower altitudes, the birds descend, sometimes traveling several hundred meters down the slope. This altitudinal migration is common in mountainous regions, where climate and resources vary more with elevation than with latitude. It is a quiet, vertical journey, a shift between worlds that exist just a short flight apart. The quetzal's migration reminds us that distance is not the only measure of a journey. Sometimes, moving between layers of the same place is enough. Out on the open plains of Mongolia, the Mongolian gazelle travels in herds that can number in the tens of thousands. These gazelles are among the last great migratory herds of Asia, moving across vast grasslands in search of fresh pasture and water. Their migrations are not fixed. They respond to rainfall, which is unpredictable in the arid steppe. In wet years, they may travel hundreds of kilometers. In dry years, they roam even farther, following the green flush of grass that appears after scattered storms. The gazelles move in waves, a flowing mass of tawny bodies and delicate legs, their presence a living echo of the great herds that once roamed much of the continent. They are guided by instinct and by the immediate needs of their bodies, and their migration is a dance with uncertainty, a constant negotiation between survival and the shifting conditions of their world. In the waters off the coast of California, another traveler moves with quiet determination. The market squid, a small cephalopod with a translucent body and large, intelligent eyes, migrates from deep offshore waters to shallow coastal areas to spawn. Squid are short-lived, most surviving only 6 to 9 months, and their entire existence is oriented toward this single reproductive event. They gather in massive aggregations, sometimes numbering in the millions, and lay their eggs in clusters on the seafloor. After spawning, the adults die, their bodies drifting down to nourish the ecosystem they leave behind. The young squid hatch weeks later and begin their own journey offshore, into the deep, dark waters where they will grow. It is a migration that completes a life cycle in one swift, purposeful arc, a reminder that some journeys are not repeated, but lived only once with absolute commitment. High in the Andes, the vicuña, a wild relative of the llama, migrates between high-altitude grasslands and lower valleys. Vicuñas are adapted to life in thin air, their blood rich with red cells to carry oxygen efficiently. They graze on tough grasses and move in family groups led by a dominant male. During the dry season, they descend to areas where water is more accessible, and during the wet season, they return to higher pastures where the grass is lush. Their wool is among the finest in the world, so fine that it was once reserved for Incan royalty. The vicuña's migration is shaped by altitude and aridity, by the rhythm of rain and drought in one of the planet's most extreme environments. They move with calm assurance, their bodies perfectly suited to the thin, cold air, their journey a testament to adaptation and endurance. In the rivers of Europe, the European eel's journey continues to inspire wonder. Scientists have studied these eels for centuries, yet many aspects of their migration remain mysterious. No one has ever observed them spawning in the Sargasso Sea, despite extensive searches. The larvae are collected in ocean currents, but the adults seem to vanish into the depths. Recent research suggests that eels may spawn at great depths, perhaps 1,000 meters down, in complete darkness. They may die after spawning, their bodies sinking into the abyss. The eel's migration is a journey into the unknown, a passage that ends in mystery. And perhaps that is fitting. Not every journey can be fully mapped. Some migrations remain beyond our reach, reminders that the world still holds secrets, quiet places where life unfolds without witness. In the deserts of the southwestern United States, the lesser long-nosed bat migrates northward each spring from Mexico, following the blooming of agave and cactus flowers. These bats are pollinators, hovering before flowers with their long tongues extended, sipping nectar and transferring pollen as they move from plant to plant. Their migration is timed precisely to the flowering season, a coordination between animal and plant that has evolved over millennia. The bats travel at night, navigating by memory and scent, and they roost in caves and abandoned mines during the day. As the flowers fade and the season shifts, the bats return south, completing a loop that sustains both bat and plant. It is a migration of mutual benefit, a partnership written into the biology of two very different forms of life. Beneath the ice of the Arctic Ocean, the narwhal moves through a world of cold and darkness. Narwhals are medium-sized whales, famous for the long, spiral tusk that extends from the male's upper jaw. This tusk is actually a tooth, filled with nerve endings, and may help the whale sense changes in water temperature and pressure. Narwhals migrate seasonally, moving to coastal areas in summer and retreating to deeper, ice-covered waters in winter. They are among the deepest diving whales, descending more than a mile beneath the surface in search of fish and squid. Their migration is vertical as well as horizontal, a journey through layers of ocean that few other creatures can endure. They travel in pods, communicating with clicks and whistles, their voices carrying through the cold, clear water. The narwhal's migration is a quiet passage through one of the planet's most remote frontiers, a journey into the icy heart of the Arctic. In the rainforests of Southeast Asia, the giant honeybee undertakes a seasonal migration that is both vertical and horizontal. These bees build large, exposed combs on cliffs and tall trees, and they migrate to follow the flowering of certain plants. When resources become scarce, entire colonies abandon their combs and fly to new locations, sometimes traveling many kilometers. They move as a coordinated swarm, thousands of individuals acting as one, guided by scouts that have located a suitable site. The migration is a collective decision, a consensus reached through communication and shared information. Once they arrive, the bees immediately begin building a new comb, secreting wax and shaping it into the familiar hexagonal cells. Their migration is a blend of architecture and navigation, a journey that ends in the creation of a new home. Out on the Serengeti, the wildebeest migration continues its endless loop, but it is not only wildebeest that follow this path. Zebras migrate alongside them, often arriving at grazing areas first. Zebras prefer taller, coarser grasses, and they graze these down, making it easier for wildebeest to access the shorter, more nutritious grasses beneath. This sequential grazing benefits both species, and it is a form of cooperation that has evolved through shared space and time. The zebra's black and white stripes may also serve a function during migration. They create visual confusion for predators and may help regulate body temperature. Each stripe is unique, like a fingerprint, and foals learn to recognize their mothers by the specific pattern of their stripes. The zebra's migration is both individual and collective, a journey marked by identity and interdependence. In the coastal waters of the North Atlantic, the Atlantic herring migrates in vast schools, moving between feeding grounds and spawning sites. Herring are small, silvery fish that form some of the largest aggregations of vertebrates on Earth. A single school can contain billions of individuals, moving as one fluid mass, their bodies flashing in the light. They migrate to shallow coastal areas to spawn, laying their eggs on the seafloor where they stick to rocks and gravel. The timing of their migration is synchronized with ocean temperatures and plankton blooms, ensuring that the young herring hatch into an environment rich with food. Herring have been a crucial resource for human communities for thousands of years, and their migration has shaped economies and cultures across northern Europe. They are a reminder that migration is not only a biological phenomenon, it is also a thread woven into human history. In the high plateaus of Tibet, the Tibetan antelope, or kairu, undertakes one of the most arduous migrations on Earth. Pregnant females travel up to 300 kilometers to reach remote calving grounds on the Tibetan Plateau, areas that are barren and wind-scoured but safe from most predators. The journey takes them across rivers, over mountain passes, and through some of the harshest terrain imaginable. They give birth in isolation, and within days, the newborn calves are strong enough to travel. The females then lead their young back to the herds, retracing the long route home. The kairu's wool, known as shatush, is extraordinarily fine and warm, and poaching once threatened the species with extinction. Conservation efforts have helped the population recover, but the migration remains a perilous journey, a testament to the lengths to which life will go to protect the next generation. In the rivers of South America, the dorado, a large golden-scaled fish, migrates upstream to spawn. The dorado is a powerful swimmer, capable of leaping over obstacles and navigating strong currents. It migrates hundreds of kilometers from the lowland rivers of the Amazon basin up into the tributaries of the Andes foothills. Along the way, it feeds on smaller fish, maintaining its strength for the journey ahead. The dorado's migration is essential to the ecology of the river, as it transports nutrients from the nutrient-rich lowlands to the nutrient-poor highlands. When the fish spawn and die, their bodies release nutrients into the water, fertilizing the ecosystem. The dorado's journey is a conduit of energy, a living link between distant parts of the river system. In the forests of North America, the ruby-throated hummingbird prepares each autumn for a journey that seems almost impossible. Weighing less than a nickel, this tiny bird migrates across the Gulf of Mexico, a nonstop flight of more than 800 kilometers over open water. To prepare, the hummingbird nearly doubles its body weight, storing fat that will fuel the crossing. It flies alone, without the guidance of a flock, navigating by instinct and the position of the sun. The flight takes approximately 18 to 20 hours, during which the bird's wings beat up to 50 times per second. It is a feat of endurance and precision, a journey that pushes the limits of what such a small body can achieve. And when the hummingbird reaches the far shore, it rests briefly, then continues onward toward the forests of Central America, where it will spend the winter. In the depths of the ocean, the deep-sea jellyfish drifts with the currents, migrating vertically each day in the largest animal migration on Earth. This daily movement, known as diel vertical migration, involves billions of creatures rising from the deep at night to feed in surface waters, then descending again before dawn. Jellyfish, along with zooplankton, fish, and squid, make this journey every single day. They move slowly, pulsing their bells, drifting upward through the dark. The migration helps them avoid predators during the day and access food at night. And it also plays a crucial role in the ocean's carbon cycle. When these creatures feed at the surface and then descend, they carry carbon into the deep, where it can be stored for centuries. The jellyfish's migration is nearly invisible, yet it shapes the chemistry of the entire ocean. On the islands of the Pacific, the Christmas Island red crab undertakes one of the most visually stunning migrations in the world. Each year, millions of these bright red crustaceans emerge from the forest floor and march toward the ocean to breed. The migration is triggered by the arrival of the wet season and the lunar cycle, and it happens with remarkable synchronicity. The crabs cover roads, gardens, and beaches, a living red tide flowing downhill. Males arrive first and dig burrows, where mating takes place. Females then carry their eggs to the water's edge and release them into the sea, timed precisely with the high tide. The larvae drift in the ocean for weeks before returning to shore as tiny crabs, beginning the long journey back into the forest. It is a migration that transforms the landscape, a spectacle of color and movement that reminds us how deeply migration is woven into the rhythm of life. In the rivers of Alaska, the Chinook salmon, the largest of the Pacific salmon species, begins its final journey. Chinook can weigh over 50 kilograms and travel more than 3,000 kilometers upstream, navigating waterfalls, rapids, and shallow streams. They do not eat during the migration, relying entirely on stored energy. Their bodies undergo dramatic changes. Their skin darkens, their jaws elongate, and their flesh softens as their bodies begin to break down. Despite these changes, they press onward, driven by an imperative older than memory. When they reach their spawning grounds, they dig nests in the gravel, lay and fertilize their eggs, and then die. Their bodies decompose, releasing nutrients that feed the entire ecosystem: insects, birds, bears, trees. The forest itself is nourished by the salmon's return, and isotopes from the ocean can be found in the rings of trees growing along the riverbanks. The salmon's migration is a gift, a transfer of energy from sea to land, a cycle that sustains life far beyond the river. In the skies over East Asia, the red-crowned crane migrates between breeding grounds in Siberia and wintering areas in China, Korea, and Japan. These cranes are symbols of longevity and good fortune in many cultures, revered for their grace and beauty. They migrate in small family groups, flying in formation and calling to one another with loud, trumpeting voices. The crane's migration is threatened by habitat loss, as wetlands are drained for agriculture and development. Conservation efforts have focused on protecting key stopover sites, places where the cranes rest and feed during their journey. The red-crowned crane's migration is a reminder of the fragility of these ancient pathways and of the responsibility we share to protect them. In the grasslands of South America, the guanaco, another wild relative of the llama, migrates seasonally in response to food availability and weather. Guanacos are hardy animals, capable of surviving in a range of environments from the Andes to the Patagonian steppe. They move in herds, led by a dominant male, and their migration patterns vary depending on local conditions. In some areas, they migrate altitudinally, moving to higher elevations in summer and descending in winter. In others, they move horizontally across the plains, following the growth of fresh grasses. Guanacos are an important prey species for pumas, and their migration influences the movements of predators as well. The guanaco's journey is flexible, adaptive, a response to the unpredictable conditions of their environment. In the waters of the Southern Ocean, the southern elephant seal undertakes one of the longest migrations of any mammal. These seals spend most of their lives at sea, diving to extraordinary depths in search of fish and squid. Males can weigh up to 4,000 kilograms, and they are among the deepest diving animals, descending more than 2,000 meters and staying submerged for over 2 hours. Elephant seals migrate thousands of kilometers between their breeding beaches and their feeding grounds in the open ocean. They come ashore only twice a year, once to breed and once to molt. During these brief periods on land, they fast completely, relying on their thick blubber for energy. The rest of the year, they are creatures of the sea, moving through cold, dark waters in a solitary, relentless search for food. Their migration is one of endurance and isolation, a journey into the vastness of the ocean. In the forests of Europe, the common cuckoo migrates each autumn from Europe to sub-Saharan Africa, a journey of more than 10,000 kilometers. Cuckoos are brood parasites, laying their eggs in the nests of other birds, and they do not raise their own young. The adult cuckoos migrate first, leaving their offspring behind. Weeks later, the young cuckoos, having never met their parents, begin their own migration, following the same route across continents and deserts. They navigate by instinct alone, guided by an inherited map written into their genes. It is one of the most remarkable examples of innate behavior, a journey undertaken without learning or guidance, purely on the strength of biological programming. The cuckoo's migration is a mystery wrapped in instinct, a testament to the power of inheritance. In the rivers of North America, the American shad migrates upstream each spring to spawn, much like salmon. Shad are members of the herring family, and they spend most of their lives in the ocean, feeding on plankton. When the time comes to reproduce, they return to the rivers where they were born, swimming against the current, and leaping over obstacles. Unlike salmon, many shad survive spawning and return to the ocean, where they may spawn again in future years. The shad's migration was once so abundant that it supported major fisheries along the Atlantic coast, and the fish were an important food source for indigenous peoples and early settlers. Dams and pollution have reduced their numbers, but restoration efforts are underway to help the shad reclaim their ancient routes. The shad's migration is a thread connecting past and present, a journey that carries the memory of rivers as they once were. In the deserts of Australia, the budgerigar, a small, brightly colored parrot, migrates in response to rainfall. Budgerigars are nomadic, traveling in large flocks across the arid interior in search of water and seeds. Their movements are unpredictable, following the scattered storms that bring brief bursts of life to the desert. When rain falls, grasses sprout, flowers bloom, and seeds ripen, and the budgerigars descend in chattering clouds to feed and breed. They are highly social, and their flocks can number in the thousands, filling the sky with color and sound. The budgerigar's migration is a dance with uncertainty, a constant search for the fleeting abundance that appears and disappears across the desert landscape. In the cold waters of the North Pacific, the Pacific halibut migrates between deep offshore waters and shallower coastal areas. Halibut are flatfish, lying on the ocean floor with both eyes on one side of their head. They are ambush predators, waiting motionless for prey to pass overhead. Halibut migrate to shallow waters to spawn, and their larvae drift with the currents before settling to the bottom. As they grow, they migrate to deeper waters, where they spend most of their adult lives. The halibut's migration is slow and deliberate, a journey measured in meters per day, yet it is no less essential for its lack of speed. It is a reminder that migration takes many forms, and that patience is as much a part of the journey as motion. In the skies over North America, the broad-winged hawk migrates each autumn in spectacular numbers. These small hawks gather in flocks called kettles, riding thermals southward towards Central and South America. At certain bottleneck points, such as the Isthmus of Panama, tens of thousands of hawks can be seen in a single day, spiraling upward on columns of warm air, then gliding southward until they find the next thermal. The broad-winged hawk's migration is one of the great spectacles of the avian world, a river of wings flowing across the sky. Observers gather at hawk watching sites to count the birds, and their data helps scientists track population trends and migration timing. The hawk's journey is a celebration of flight, a demonstration of how efficiently a bird can travel when it works with the wind. In the rivers of Asia, the Mekong giant catfish, one of the largest freshwater fish in the world, migrates upstream to spawn. These enormous fish can weigh over 200 kilograms, and they travel hundreds of kilometers through the Mekong River system. The catfish's migration is poorly understood, as the species is critically endangered and rarely observed. What is known is that they move with the seasonal floods, timing their journey to coincide with rising water levels. The Mekong giant catfish is a symbol of the river's health, and its decline reflects the broader challenges facing the Mekong: dams, overfishing, and habitat loss. Efforts to protect the species focus on preserving migration corridors and reducing barriers to movement. The catfish's journey is a call to attention, a reminder that migration cannot happen without the rivers, the forests, and the open spaces that make it possible. In the forests of Madagascar, the radiated tortoise moves slowly through the dry, spiny forest, migrating short distances in search of food and mates. These tortoises are beautifully marked, their shells adorned with yellow lines radiating from the center of each skid. They are herbivores, feeding on grasses, fruits, and succulent plants, and they migrate seasonally in response to the availability of food. Their migration is measured in meters per day, a slow, deliberate journey that reflects the tortoise's ancient pace of life. Despite their slow speed, radiated tortoises are remarkably persistent, and they can travel considerable distances over the course of a season. Their migration is a meditation on patience, a reminder that not all journeys are fast, and that slowness has its own kind of grace. In the waters off the coast of South Africa, the sardine run creates one of the ocean's greatest spectacles. Each year, billions of sardines migrate northward along the coast. forming massive shoals that can be several kilometers long. The sardines are pursued by predators, dolphins, sharks, seals, and seabirds, all converging on the moving feast. The water churns with life, a frenzy of feeding and movement. Yet even in the midst of this chaos, there is order. The sardines move as one, their bodies flashing silver, their school twisting and turning in coordinated waves. The sardine run is a migration of abundance, a seasonal pulse of energy that sustains countless other species. It is a reminder that migration is not only about the traveler, it is also about the web of life that depends on the journey. And quietly, as we move through these many migrations, a pattern begins to emerge. Each journey, whether vast or small, is shaped by the same fundamental forces: the need for food, the drive to reproduce, the pull of seasons, and the push of survival. Migration is not a single story. It is a chorus, a collection of voices singing the same ancient song in different keys. Some migrations are loud and visible, filling the sky with wings or the plains with hooves. Others are silent and hidden, unfolding in the depths of the ocean or beneath the soil. But all of them are expressions of life's persistence, of the will to continue, to adapt, to move forward. Migration teaches us that change is not something to fear. It is the rhythm of life itself. Animals do not resist the turning of the seasons. They flow with it, trusting in the patterns that have guided their ancestors for millennia. They do not worry about the distance ahead or the obstacles in their path. They simply move, one wing beat, one step, one breath at a time. And in their movement, they find everything they need: food, safety, companionship, the continuation of their kind. As you rest tonight, you can take comfort in knowing that somewhere, right now, an animal is on a journey. A bird is crossing an ocean. A whale is diving into the deep. A butterfly is drifting on the wind. They're not afraid. They're simply following the path that is written into their bodies, the path that connects them to the world and to the future. And in their journeys, they carry something timeless, a reminder that life is motion, that home is not always a place, but sometimes a direction, a rhythm, a return. You are safe here, in this moment, in this quiet space. The migrations continue, as they always have, as they always will. The world is full of travelers, and their journeys weave a tapestry of connection across the planet. You are part of that tapestry, too. Even as you rest, your breath rises and falls like the tides. Your heartbeat echoes the rhythm of wings and hooves and fins. You are connected to all of this, to the great movement of life, even in stillness. If you're still awake, know that there are always more stories waiting, more quiet wonders to explore. But if sleep is calling, you can let go now. The migrations will continue without you. The animals will find their way. And you, too, will find your way when the time is right. For now, simply rest. Let the knowledge of these journeys settle softly around you like a blanket. Let the rhythm of migration lull you into peace. The world is vast, and it is full of travelers. But tonight, you do not need to travel anywhere. You are exactly where you need to be. The journey can wait. The stories can wait. Right now, there's only this breath, this moment, this gentle, quiet rest. Sleep well, dear listener. The migrations go on, and so does the world, turning slowly beneath the stars. And you are held within it, safe and still, a part of the endless, beautiful pattern of life. Good night.